Hi, welcome back to Wild Speculation. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we talk about Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 101, Mysteries, Memories, and Music.
Yes.
Matt's gotten out of practice timing his breaks.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to catch the beginning of this one live, and took me until Monday, yesterday, to actually watch the beginning of it. But you had texted me.
Yeah, I actually got the opportunity to watch it live, which is not a normal occurrence.
Yeah.
You know, I can usually catch like the last hour or so, but that's about it.
Yeah. But texted me 30 years. That puts it when Keyleth's mom disappeared. I was like, yep. So much in this episode.
Yeah. Lots of.
For me, Matt all but confirmed that it's Keyleth's mom.
Yeah.
And seems we might have been right also about Mandarin. And Sam and Laura caught on.
Yeah. Or at least they're coming to the same conclusion that we did.
Yeah. I did love Travis. It's kind of far to go. And I'm thinking, motherfucker, you have gone all over Wildemount. You don't think Mandarin could make it a couple hundred miles?
Well, you know.
Especially if he had any of the kind of invocations that Ford has.
Yeah. Like
because then
the depth.
Yeah. Then he doesn't need to worry about swimming. He just goes underwater.
Yeah, he's got a swim speed. He can breathe underwater.
Yeah. But a lot of stuff for our purposes was dropped in that first half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned that I thought it was that the flower shape of the island was indicative of the Feywild and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode, I don't think I'm wrong, but I do have to modify what I said before because of some of the things that Matt said. Matt was talking about strange collection of things.
Mm-hmm.
And places.
Mm-hmm.
Strange slivers
mm-hmm.
that are on the island. We got a time frame of how long the settlement has been there. 10 to 11 generations.
Yep.
200 years-ish?
Yeah.
Which gives it about 100 years to form and for it to be discovered after the calamity. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, the calamity is like
300 years ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little over.
Yeah.
But if Rumblecusp has been rising from the bottom of the ocean, since the calamity, 100 years is not that long for it to reach the surface.
It's true.
So it's in keeping with the idea that I modified my idea to,
right.
Which is that Rumblecusp is a planar axis.
Yes. Which makes it being the choice because it makes it significant because if it's a planar axis and the Traveler, when originally talking to Jester about the con, said that the solstice, the day he's planning to have it, is the day where the barrier between the planes is the thinnest.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if Bukodo and Traveler know each other. Because it was around that time at one point, Traveler's leaving Jester's company, says, I have to go visit an old friend someplace ashy.
Yeah, and in that episode, we talked about maybe somebody in the Ashkeeper peaks, because we know that that's significant in some way
Right.
to the events of the calamity that the Nine haven't dug into yet.
And I think that'll come back to the fore when we're reaching the pinnacle, and we talked about that.
Yeah. But yes, it could have been Rumblecusp that he was coming to.
A volcano.
I don't know if that's the case.
Okay.
But my evidence is scant, and it's only that when Jester was communing with him, and when she's talking to him in the village before that, he didn't seem to know what was going. Like he was actually taking the brief from Jester.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
He's a trickster god.
Well, one, he's a trickster guy. Yeah, that's.
I mean, that's the main nail in my coffin.
That goes without saying, though.
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm wondering. So we know that the Traveler likes the idea of divine power, does not like the responsibility attached to it.
I think Jester.
We've been going on the assumption that he is gathering all of his followers for an ascension.
Yeah.
What if that's not the case?
What if Laura's right?
What if he's gathering the ones who bug him the most and is dropping them off at his friends to wipe their memory so he doesn't have to deal with them anymore?
Yeah.
What if he's not telling all of his followers to come here, just the ones who bug him, who he gets annoyed with?
Except I don't think Jester fits that. Like, the Fae will dance around the truth, but they never outright lie.
That's true.
And she has upfront asked him in no uncertain terms, am I your favorite? Am I still your favorite?
Well, I mean, she could be his favorite just on the grounds that he said she's the first one that believed in it and that gave him divine power. You set me on this path.
Yeah.
I don't need you anymore, but you're my favorite because you put me on this path.
It's true.
Or maybe he did it just so she didn't run into someone, find out about it.
Yeah.
And he intends on sparing her, but getting rid of a chunk of his followers.
Yeah.
We've talked a few times about, what the Traveler's plan is here, what's going to happen. Is it going to be a point of contention between Jester and the Traveler kind of thing? And, I mean, if he's seeking her help to dump off a bunch of his followers, how is she going to take that?
Well, she seems totally willing to do that.
Well, she's busy proselytizing everybody, and he's trying to dump people.
Yeah, but she's the one that realized that maybe the point is for them to lose their memories and be dumped here.
Yeah.
And she seemed okay with that.
It's true. But, I mean...
Because from her point of view, so long as she's still important and still has the power, then, everyone else is just a victim of the latest trick.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that came up when Bo was questioning Viridian?
Yes.
Yeah. Was they can't remember anyone who's left.
Mm-hmm.
They're certain that people have left.
Yep.
They don't remember who they are, which I thought was interesting. And when she's evidence for the planar axis.
Okay.
When she's briefing them on the island, what's on the island, and everything,
right,
and giving them the key sort of points.
Mm-hmm.
We have the mine that she mentions, and later a kid refers to it as the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they get all their gems. That could be the plane of Earth.
Yeah.
The cold place without color, or the gray that's gray, screams Shadowfell to me.
Yeah.
Heaven's Falls could be a combination of air and water.
Yeah, and when she was talking about Heaven Falls, I was like, okay. She went in over by the water shard to fight the Kraken. She got injured.
And came out through the falls.
Came out through the falls. That's how she ended up on the island.
Yep. Which would make, well, yeah, okay, cool. I'll take that because it's evidence that I'm right.
Don't you love it when we find evidence that proves two different theories that we have correct? Yes. Or lends to it?
Yes. The ruins, though, are interesting. And she wasn't able to give any information on the ruins. So I wanted to speculate where those might be from. Do you have any ideas?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I have two.
Okay.
One is that they are pre-calamity ruins.
Okay.
And that they may even be one of the cities, one of the flying cities.
Oh, okay.
Because if that's the case, if Matt can give them a piece of that now, they're going north to where we know one crashed.
Yep.
So if he gives them a piece of that now, he can sprinkle in foreshadowing for that stuff coming up. The other thing that I think it could be, and would be interesting if it were, is ruins from Mount Celestia, where the gods dwell.
Okay.
And there's some interesting ramifications if that's the case.
Yeah. Because that means
there's a piece of the divine on this side of the gate.
Yeah.
For one. And two...
And that there could be an anchor to the gate.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Matt hasn't put out in any of the books, there's no God at the divine gate. There's no guardian being of the gate. There's no entity whose job it is to ensure that the gate remains.
No flaming sword spinning in every direction to keep them out of Eden, so to speak.
Exactly. And I think Vo might be that entity. And I have a suspicion on what deity it could be.
Okay.
Which goes to the Pocket Watch.
Hit me with it.
BV. I think the B might stand for Bahamut.
Okay. What's the B stand for?
I don't know. My first thought was Veritas. Truth.
Yeah.
Or it could just be... Because Bahamut, the Platinum Dragon, will take the guise of humans and walk.
Yeah.
In Dragonlance, Paladine, their version, was the first god to return
Yep.
to Krynn.
Has been the fabulous.
Exactly. And I think when Vox Machina went to the heavens, they didn't hear anything about Bahamut. And Bahamut's clerics were essentially the protectors of Vasselheim.
Right.
Maybe the reason that that's the case is because Bahamut is protecting the gate. And there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of things that, as they're describing what Vode does in the relationship, sounds an awful lot like a metallic dragon.
Yes. And I even talked about it possibly being, brought up the two fire dragons, the brass and the gold.
Yeah.
Which, and I know that, and everyone's saying, and it's true, all the quote unquote pointers are hitting the Morkoth, but like I said last week, it's got to have some serious upgrades if it's a Morkoth.
Yeah.
Because that's only like a CR 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And they showed last week, and you had touched on it even before that they're strong enough at this point to take on a CR 17.
Yeah.
So a CR 11 wouldn't even be a fight.
No. They say that Vokodo amasses the gifts, things that are precious, which made me think of a silver dragon.
Yeah.
And that's why, there's a lot of things that sound like a gold dragon. The things that are precious, especially things that are from outside of the island, that will have a story with them. That's very silver dragony.
Yeah.
So all these things, I was like, there's not enough to point to any one, just that it could be a metallic dragon, and that's why my brain sort of went to Bahamut, and that there's not a deity that we know of that protecting the gate is their job. Or it could also be someone akin to one of the three saints that is in Clay's backstory.
Yeah.
But basically, this person served a deity, and they're basically a demigod.
Or, now you're talking, it could be, this thing could be to Bahamut what Uk'oto is to the Cloak Serpent.
Yeah. Or what Vax'ildan is now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that it could be a being that's on the cusp of godhood, just like the Traveler is. And that maybe if the two of them work together, they can finally achieve it.
Yeah. Or one or both of them could be using the other to achieve it.
And plans on dumping the other one. Yeah. I mean, it could also be that the Traveler has come here to where the anchor is so that he can crack it open.
Yeah.
For his own purposes. Not knowing or not caring of the ramifications of doing so.
If he doesn't know, it's because he's ignored it because he doesn't care.
It's fair. And really, the cosmology, the divine gate surrounds the Feywild as well.
Mhm.
Because as Matt has explained it, and as I understand it, as with most cosmologies, the Feywild and Shadowfell are very close to the material plane,
Correct.
and the Divine Gate is supposed to separate the upper planes, the heavens, the underworld proper, and all that stuff is separate.
Yeah.
And the elemental planes are obviously still close because we got evidence of that last campaign.
Right.
So we have the elemental planes, Shadowfell, the Feywild, and the material plane are all on this side of the Divine Gate, and everything else is on the other side of it. So I don't know what. Maybe he's trying to forge his own doorway beyond.
Yeah.
Since he needed Vox Machina to give him a doorway into Exandria.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Also brought up when they were talking about Lukoto and the prospect of meeting him and everything was the idea that maybe the memory loss is tied to gifts that you give them, which is also sort of how I backed into the Bahamut thing. Because if it is Bahamut, to ensure that he does not tip the scale in any way, he may have been cursed by the other gods or accepted this curse, this thing, that he forgets where he's from. He knows he has a purpose. His purpose is here. He has the capacity to still get joy in being here. And I think that the offering of these gifts is that what's the word I'm looking for? Compact, a communion. It seals the deal between you and he. And so you take on this purpose.
Right. And
with this purpose comes the loss of memory. But yeah. And then I loved Yasha. What if they wanted to forget? Because we talked about this a lot in the early episodes before Molly kicked. That the two of them had a bond over their shared memory loss, and that they both viewed it as a blessing.
Yeah.
And we got more of that from Molly than from Yasha.
Oh yeah.
And mostly because Ashley was in New York all the time. But they haven't really had much of an opportunity to touch on that aspect of Yasha again.
Right.
And I think they all believe that any memory loss that she has is probably tied to trauma from being under the Laughing Hands auspices before. Which I'm not sure that's really the case.
Right.
So, yeah. I also love there are plenty of good people that don't kill anyone. Well, name one. Okay.
Yeah. Couple of things that were not so heavy that were interesting. Jester with the necklace, talking to plants.
Yeah.
And then the reaction from both Travis and Marisha. Travis asked Ford, accusing her of copying. Just because he doesn't mean you have to. Acknowledging that whole.
Yeah.
And then, man, every time, except the Sun Tree, everyone was a jerk.
Yeah. Which made me hopeful that they might start questioning this druid from Tal'Dorei with a vine leg.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if they're going to test their greater restoration theory that she's the one they tested on?
I think so.
Do you think they do it without permission?
I think so. And I think they do it before they meet Makoto. Because if they have any inkling that there's going to be a showdown with Makoto, or they do it, right then and there, they don't want to be fighting a druid and Makoto. And if they restore the memory, there's a chance that she's going to turn on Makoto because, oh my gosh, I remember all this of my family. You've kept me from my family.
Yeah. Now, there's another possibility.
Okay.
And this comes from outside of the show, so it's not something that I like to include.
Okay.
But because Keyleth's story was so heavily influenced by Avatar: The Last Airbender,
mm-hmm.
I think Matt might have used the comic book The Search to determine what happened to Keyleth's mom, and may have mirrored what happened to Zuko's mother. Which, if you don't know, and I don't think you read the comics.
I have not.
After being banished, she fled to her first love, who to hurt Ozai, because she knew that he was reading her letters, she lied and said that Zuko was his. Which is one of the reasons why Ozai treats Zuko like crap forever. He's like, you wanted me to believe this, so I'm going to. And you will witness it. Because he's a sicko. But there's a spirit, the giver of faces, who is the mother of Ko.
Okay.
The face stealer. And when she gives people new faces, she also wipes their memory. And her lover come to the spirit, and she asks for a new face. And in doing so, she asks also to forget. So I'm wondering if there isn't some parallel there.
Yeah.
So even if they do restore her memory, it may not change the fact that she doesn't want to leave, because she probably did make the choice to stay here willingly to aid in the protection of the gate.
Possibly, yeah.
If
the gate theory is true, I can see that. And she chose to have her memory wiped so she wouldn't regret leaving Keyleth.
Yeah. And she had faith in that Keyleth could do the Aramente.
Yeah.
And do it.
Okay.
Which really puts her between 17 and 20 level druid, just like Keyleth is.
Yeah.
Because I think Keyleth completed her Aramente at 17th level.
I think so, yeah.
I think. So, yeah, she's...
Yeah.
definitely not one they want to fight alongside Vokodo if they have to fight.
Exactly.
Matt reiterated that the being is quite aware and it's always watching. And Matt reiterated several times, you guys all feel like, and he kept having to make investigation checks.
Yeah.
If memory serves, stuff randomly going missing happens on several planes.
Okay.
It sort of happened to them in Pandemonium.
Yeah.
Although technically, I guess they got pickpocketed, but
yeah, there are places that happens. It is one of the pointers for the Morkoth, because that is one of the Morkoth's abilities. Every long rest, it's I think a DC 10 investigation check, or you lose something. You know, that's one of the reasons so many people are pointing to the Morkoth. And that and the always being watched are two of its main things. But like I said, if it is a Morkoth, it's a heavily modified one. Because as written, it's a CR 10 or 11, and it's not a 5.
Well, and that's an evil creature.
Correct.
And
formed from the body of a dead god floating in the astral sea.
Yeah. Nothing about Vokodo says evil.
Right.
Which is why I tend to reject that idea. But gold dragons have that same kind of awareness, I think, in their terrain. And mist is common around gold dragon layers as well.
Yeah.
So,
which was also Gold Dragon was my first thought when I was watching, because the mist, the watching, the living in a volcano on an island, because they
are
breathe underwater and all that stuff.
And she would never possibly see the gold dragon because they
have polymorph.
Yep. Well, they have polymorph and they retain their ability to breathe water, even polymorph. So it can be under the water speaking to her.
Yeah.
And I think they have telepathy.
Yes, I believe so.
So there again, there's no physical manifestation that has to be moving a mouth. So it can be this thing. And maybe it's a gold dragon that's dedicated to Bahamut. I have a feeling that Bahamut plays into this time. But yeah. Are we more or less certain that Vandrin is on the island?
I personally believe he is.
Okay.
Really, the only strong, what I would consider strong evidence pointing to it, is the sending that Jester said, where he said he's retired to the island. There's good folks,
Yeah, he's doing good works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we haven't met anyone from the mining crew.
Yeah.
Matt said the boy was 7 or 8. The Keyleth gave the...
Yeah.
Now the timelines don't match up. But she also seemed... the other point that it's in favor that Vandren is there is she seemed to know when she's talking about people who have come. Yeah. Matt looked at Travis and basically implied that she knew that he was a warlock and that he's not the first one.
Yeah.
And I'm a little sad that Travis didn't think to ask, do I recognize the clothes?
Yeah.
Especially after, like, he's not going to think of that for sure. But when Veth and Jester are saying, what's Vandren's first name?
Yeah.
Why, Vandren. Is it?
That's all I know him as. So it could be his first or last name.
Yeah, but it's, the Dread Pirate Roberts. Roberts isn't his first name. And it's not...
Technically, it's not actually his last name either.
But, like, the series isn't called Jean-Luc.
Right.
It's called Picard. So, I think it's funny that he didn't think that that was the case.
Yeah.
I mean, even his own last name, he basically chopped off and left. Maybe Vandren chopped off his first name.
Yeah.
This was also the first episode where Not, in true Traveler Alkalite fashion, tried to communicate with another Traveler Alkalite with sleight of hand. Do you think Taliesin internalized that he still noticed it? Because 17 is not below Caduceus' passive perception.
Yeah.
Or sorry, is not above his passive perception.
I think he did. I think that's something Taliesin would do.
Okay. Because it's not important in the moment that Taliesin, that Caduceus make it known that he saw it.
Right. And I don't think it's something Caduceus would make a note of. He'd notice and been like, okay, that's just what they do. It's fine. No one's harming anyone. It's just what they do.
Yeah. But yeah, that. And she let it slip later, asking, did the Traveler confirm what he wrote? Well, how do you know what he wrote? Ah!
Yep.
Which is the first time that we've ever seen... No, I take it back. It's only the second time we've ever seen Not use Mage Hand, Ledgermane.
Yeah.
The first time was when she was plucking buttons off of blouses.
Yeah. Well, no. She's done it once on Disarming and Trap.
Well, she's used Mage Hand to do that, but not Mage Hand Ledgermane, where the hand was invisible.
Oh, okay.
In that instance, it wasn't necessarily invisible.
Correct.
She was just using it to do it. So, yeah. Yasha's performance. I'm a little confused, maybe. On why Matt narrated the way that he did. I mean, I know Ashley is not particularly comfortable doing narration like that.
Right.
And I think that's probably the biggest part of it. But him contextualizing it for the other players is sort of what is the biggest sort of head scratcher for me.
Yeah. I don't know, because like everyone's saying, hey, I do this to add to, so it was kind of a group effort. So just kind of like, this is, and I don't know, like I was invoking images of old 80s metal bands ending up on MTV Unplugged from the, an MTV Unplugged metal band video.
It's fair. But she said, so those critters who are more skilled in music than I have some suggestions.
Okay.
On what that sounded like. And I think she was probably playing in D.
Okay.
D major. But she was using a Dorian scale. Now, you don't necessarily have to know what either of those things are to play them if you feel the music. Mm-hmm. But a Dorian scale shifts the 6th and 7th note in the scale down a little bit, and it makes it sound sad. It makes it sound closer to a minor scale.
Okay.
And minor tends to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
And D is the saddest of the major keys. So that's why I say it was. That's in my head. That's probably what it was.
Okay, I can see that.
So if you're gonna interpret it and write something, that's my suggestion. But the trip through the jungle after the break, is it 2.5 hours into the episode? Something like that, when they took the break?
Yeah. Real quick, backtrack for just a second. Why do you think Ford made such a big deal about the pocket watch? They're looking at the pocket watch and something, and he's just like, you're not just keeping that. We can't just keep that. He's never been opposed to anything like this before. The closest thing he's ever been opposed to Morley Gray was when, well, I'm not going to kill him. I'll walk away. You guys do whatever you want. With the Kryn soldier in the sewers the first time, Like, he is...
Well, he drew on Caleb, though, when he felt that stealing was wrong.
That was because it would leave evidence going back to them.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with it being right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, if he's operating on the assumption, as Bo was, that this stuff belonged to the Dwarven family, then they are contemplating stealing from their host.
Yeah.
Which is
it just
messed up.
It didn't feel, and this is going back to my own prejudices about
Paladins.
Ford.
Oh, Ford. That he is not lawful good.
He is not lawful good. He might be lawful. He's not good. I don't believe him to be good at all.
Okay.
I have not from episode 1. I believe he may have been good in his backstory, but he has done nothing to say that he is a
So you don't think that this is Ford reasserting that? As Jester said, Ford's trying to be honorable.
It could be. God, now that you said that, I'm thinking maybe he will go redemption paladin when he finally takes his oath, and that's what I wanted for him. But it just struck me as like, why are you doing this? You don't care about this kind of stuff, you know? And I just wanted to get your take on it real quick, because that and the plant necklace were the 2 things I wanted to touch on before we. And the plant necklace kind of goes into the next step, but
yeah, well, the plant necklace was.
But yeah, the pocket watch. I was like in my head, I'm like, this is out of character for Ford. You know, every other like when he drew on Caleb, he made it very clear why.
Yeah,
and they had gone in. We're not taking anything beforehand. There was no discussion about that this time. There was no explanation about it. It was just like, we can't just take things from people. You've been doing that all campaign, bro. Why the sudden growth of conscience? You know?
Yeah.
And it just, you know?
Unless he is angling for that redemption next level.
Yeah. I mean, so I was just like, this is not, why are you doing this? Did someone make an evil Ford comment on Twitter and you want to try to justify that he's not?
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay, now we can. I just wanted to bring that up because that was one of the things that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's the paladin.
Okay.
And that is the biggest thing.
This is the first, I guess, big instance of that kind of thing post paladin.
Yeah. Because especially leading up to that exchange, he was thinking like a paladin, because he's like, you know, the Wild Mother has given me these powers to heal, cure disease and things. Do you guys have anything? And then they're all talking about, well, maybe the Jester's like, have you ever asked the Wild Mother what she feels about the Traveler?
Yeah.
And there was that kind of talk going into that. And I think that's why it was on the front of his mind. That's why he's like, we shouldn't be doing this.
Okay.
Especially because they were fresh clothes, essentially. Brand new. They're not worn out or anything. The box is, but the clothes are fine. And the watch is busted, but they fixed it.
Well, and see, okay. And here's another point, and this is, I know we both don't believe it's a Morkov, but there are signs that point to it. You have to give that. If it is a Morkov or based off a Morkov, there's that chance of forgetting and losing something after every long rest for the first year you're there. You become immune to that effect after you've been in their area for a year. So if those clothes are new, that means these are new additions to the settlement. That means they're probably going to forget about the watch anyway, so who cares if they take it?
Well, that was Veth's argument. They probably don't even know it's here.
See?
Which begs the question. See, I think it's the Feywild, and it could be pixies.
And even still, memory loss. They're going to forget they had it anyway.
But yeah, Caduceus has a bad day.
Very bad day.
Gets stuck in tar twice. Basically just gives up.
Help, it's again. I love that line.
Yeah. And I loved it where he's like, yeah, it's not even a dignified, I'm just going to pick him up sideways. Not by the shoulders, just
yoink.
yoink.
And And the opposite way the hair flops, so it's just in my face.
Yeah. And I'm trying to decide of Laura and Travis who is more freaked out by stuff. Because Laura, this episode, was the one that was like, nope, nope. It's like, you don't know.
Laura will have a milder freak out, but more often. Travis will have a larger freak out, but not as frequent.
Fair. I won't argue that.
Because when something hits Travis, he is
out of the chair.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Jaw dropped.
Yeah.
Whereas Laura is not as freaked out when she freaks out, but she's very much more vocal about any little bit.
Yeah. And she catches on to, as we've discussed, she catches on to things way faster than everybody. But it's a Bodak that they find. CR5 creature.
Yes.
In theory, Bo could have killed it by herself, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I didn't run the numbers, but
12th level monk is gonna walk all over that.
As she said many levels ago, I can punch ghosts.
Yes.
Now some of their save or die mechanics might come into play.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, basically for it to stand a chance against Bo, it's got to keep its distance and use those effects and get lucky.
Which it's not going to do because it was right behind her.
Right. One, it's not going to do it, it's right behind her. Two, she's a monk. It's going to have a hard time keeping out of reach. But the thing is, the lightning gloves aren't going to do anything because it's immune to lightning damage.
Yeah.
So she's got to actually get up to it, which isn't hard for a monk.
Yeah.
But that's the only way it's got any chance is if he can stay but it's got to get within her movement range in order to utilize its powers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's screwed.
Yeah. And
I think it's only like a 13 or 14 DC.
To hit it? Yeah.
No,
to save? Yeah. Yeah, I think 13 or 14, yeah.
Yeah, which, yeah, she's going to...
Yeah. She's got +9? No, +8, I think. 7 or 8 on her wisdom save, which is what it is.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's the Bodak and the what did Matt call him? Something ant or ant something?
Oh, the thing under the tar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are just minor drains on their resources.
Yeah.
To put a little bit of resource management worry on their way to Vokodo.
Yeah.
So if they fight, well, they're going to fight the Bodak. Beginning of next episode. I don't think it goes past 2 rounds.
No.
Unless something else comes out.
Yeah. Unless something else comes out, I don't even know that it goes 2 rounds.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't go a full 2 rounds.
No.
But I'm going to be surprised if it goes 8, if it gets into the second round.
Yeah. they can just put so much damage out.
I mean, she throws, 4 attacks with flurry of blows?
Mm-hmm. She's doing really
and
good.
4 does a set of Eldritch Blasts, which is 3 at this point? 4? 3. That's 7 attacks.
Yeah.
That they're not going to have to roll very high to hit.
Nope.
Yeah.
And
that's only 2 of the 7.
Yeah. Not's going to fire twice with her crossbow. That's magical.
3 times if she gets a crit.
Yep.
4 times if she gets 2 crits.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus the 2 clerics.
Yeah. And the wizard.
And Caduceus doesn't even have to use a spell slot. Just Sacred Flame it.
Yeah.
Done. So yeah, unless something else comes out from the 60-foot range that Caduceus has.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be done in 10, 15 minutes. And then they'll be on to Vokodo. I don't think there's another random encounter planned.
No.
Random encounter. I don't even know if this was necessarily a random encounter. I think it's just... Because they didn't even have to engage with it.
I think it was random in the sense that they didn't have to engage with it.
Yeah.
But it was just... If they decide to follow the crying.
Yeah. Which is actually a good tip. To make the world feel lived in, you can put those little things in your travel montage. The players can ignore it and move on, or they go after it. Just don't set something up if you're not prepared for it.
Yes.
Because then you're going to be like, oh, they're going after it. Okay.
And as you said, it's a great way to just sap little bits of their resources before the encounter you want them to have a hard time with.
Right. And they've already used 3 spells?
Yeah.
Because Caduceus did Bless, and I think he did a Cure Wounds, right?
Bless
And
Cure
Laura
Wounds,
did a
Healing Word. And Caleb has already used his 1 free polymorph from his subclass.
So, yeah. Not a lot, but it's enough of a bit.
It doesn't have to be a lot in these. It just has to be just enough for them to be okay with using it and not realizing they're not going to have it for the fight you actually have planned. You know? A key point here, a low-level spell, a healing spell there, you know.
Well, do you think it's going to be a fight with Vokodo?
It depends. I think there's a high potential. I'm going to say 60-40 it is a fight.
Okay.
And it's going to depend on the interaction with Vokodo. It's not going to start out as a fight. But either they're going to say something stupid and piss off Vokodo, or Vokodo's going to say something that one of them doesn't agree with. And they're going to be like, we can't do this.
Do you think it doesn't start until they start doubting and calling them out on the non-deity thing? Because that's the only thing that I can think of that will trigger it.
I think that's going to happen pretty early on then, if that's it. Because Jester's the one that has been told it's not a real...
Yeah, but she's also the one of everybody that's not got a problem with it. Like she said, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but the second he portrays that, oh, I know you're not a real god.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Well, I'm not a real god already told me you're not a real god.
I guess that also depends on whether or not they whammy Viridian with the Greater Restoration before. Yeah. So yeah. I guess we'll have to wait until Thursday.
Yep.
To find out. And we will talk to you guys next week.
I guess.